Hello. Good morning, everyone. My name is Mariah. I am the Education and Outreach Coordinator here at JFG. If you didn't do the tutorials with us the first time, kind of how it's going to go is I'm going to go through all of the crafts that were in the craft kit. And then after this, we will put this on the YouTube channel so that you can go back and rewatch this or whatever specific craft you want to do as many times as you need to. But to start, we're going to start with the Shibori dyeing. So if you haven't already, go ahead and get everything ready for that. Sorry, I do have a mask on. I might take it off in a little bit, but I am inside our office, so I am trying to practice good social distancing with my coworker and make sure that everyone is safe. So anyways, in the meantime, like I said, we're going to do the Shibori, so you'll want to grab your napkin, which is obviously still white with no dye on it. You're also going to need your bowl. Some of you have a blue bowl or a white bowl. I kind of mentioned on there that you need hot water, so whether you boiled that or however you want to heat it up, I just used one of the instant kettles. But you just want really hot water for this. Fair warning with this particular one, I'm going to start it and show it to you how to do the whole process. However, it does need to sit in the dye for anywhere at least 30 minutes to an hour. So at the end, I'll kind of try to come back and show you what mine looks like, but this is one of the ones that I'll show you, but we can't quite do the whole tutorial from start to finish, since it will take about at least 30 to an hour for the dye and the napkin to sit. So you should have a pair of gloves in your kit. You'll want to get those out. Be careful when using the dye. The dye provided in the bottles is RIT dye, which is a clothing dye. So if it does get on your clothes, it will dye them. So if you want to wear an apron, or like I wore a black shirt today. You also need your rubber bands that came with it. You should have 2 cardboard pieces. Yeah, and then your RIT dye. So just remember to be careful. So we're actually going to start. I'm going to put my gloves on. Feel free to comment below if you guys have any questions or concerns throughout this process. We can see your comments, so you can even tell us if you're having a good time, anything like that. Okay, so we're going to start with your fabric. My fabric looks a little bit different than yours, but it's all the same process and the same size. There are lots of different ways to do Shibori of like the techniques and the patterns you can make, so this is just one. So you're going to start just by making a fold. We're going to try to fold this into fourths, so try to eye it out. You can always pre-measure if you'd like of what that exactly would be, but I just kind of eye it out to make sure that I can fold it in fourths. So I fold it over. Perfect. Then you're going to flip it back. So you're not just going to fold, fold, fold. You're going to fold, flip it back, flip it forward, flip it back. Okay, so I can already tell my first piece is too big, so I'm going to start over since I need 4. Okay, flip it back. If you are a slight perfectionist, you can always iron this in advance. That does help with your crisp lines. Okay, so let's try this. Flip it back. Okay. I'm going to flip it again, flip it over. One last time for the fold. Okay. So it needs to be as exact as it works for your personality. Like I said, I did not measure mine, but if you really want each square to be perfectly the same size, I'd recommend measuring it or ironing it. So once you have this long rectangle-like shape, right, you're going to start in one corner, just one of the corners. And I'll kind of try to hold it up because I know this angle is kind of hard for you. And you're just going to fold it down to a triangle. So if you can see, I just took one side of it and folded it into a triangle. Okay? So make sure I get that straight. So similar to how you just folded it, you're not just going to keep folding it over, you're going to fold it back. Okay? So now it should square off the top, but you should still be able to see that triangle. And then same thing, you're going to fold it back again. So now you kind of have a pointed edge again, if that makes sense. You're going to kind of keep following that routine there. Until when you're done, you should end up with just a thick triangle. Okay, hopefully that makes sense. So now that you have this thick stack, you're going to take the 2 cardboard pieces and place one on each side of the triangle. Okay. So what these do, once we put the rubber bands on, are help to make that design that you kind of saw earlier. So if you see here, some of the pieces are lighter. Those are where the triangles were sitting, where you can tell like these darker edges were where there was no cardboard around it. So it's up to you how you want to do it. Like the more space there is between this and the cardboard, the darker or thicker of the indigo line there's going to be. So place the triangles how you want. See the design. It's kind of fun because you kind of don't know exactly what it's going to look like. So no matter what you do, you kind of get a little bit of a surprise. Okay. Hold them tight. You're going to take your rubber bands. Start with the edges. So put one on the edge. Put them tight. You can kind of spread the rubber bands out too. So like, if you can see, they're not all concentrated just on one area. They're kind of going, because those do actually kind of show up in your design. If you see here, these like little marks through here, that's the rubber bands. Okay, I'm gonna do the other side of the triangle. Supposed to be nice and sunny today, so I hope you guys are all able to get out. Okay, so now I have my 2 edges with the rubber bands, and then you should have 2 more, and you're going to kind of put them through the center. So if you can kind of see my green rubber band here. Whoop! That one snapped. Okay, that's okay. You can either tie it back together or use another one. As long as the cardboard is able to just be pressed down tight enough, that's all you need. So since I only have one, I'm going to split it. So I put it around here and then flipped it there. Let's see if I can get this one to go one more time. Perfect. Okay. Gonna redo my second one just so I have a little bit more design going through it. But like I said, the goal is just to make sure that the rubber bands are nice and tight, pressing the cardboard into the fabric. Feel free to mess with it to get it how you like it. I want my lines a little spread out, so I'm going to do this one more time. Bear with me. And if you're wondering, no, you do not have to have the gloves on for this portion. I just put them on now so I don't forget. Okay. So now that the rubber bands are all on and my cardboard's pressed in, this is where you're going to start using the dye and the hot water. So I'm going to put my hair back. Like I said, I have already used the instant kettle, so like mine is already heated up. So if not, this would be the time to start heating your water. Please, please be very careful. We don't want anyone getting hurt. So I'm going to stand up. So I'm just going to start by filling my bowl up with the very, very hot water. Okay. You don't want to fill it too high so that you're able to kind of move it, since like I said, you're going to have to kind of set this aside if you're trying to go through all of the crafts with us today. So I'm going to take my Rit dye. So this is what's inside your bottle, guys, if you want to go pick it up. It is the indigo color. They have like synthetic options, more natural fiber options. These were great. I use them for tie-dyeing in general, so you can get these at any craft store. Okay, so your guys' are already preset, so you can go ahead and pour the whole bottle in. If you kind of want to test it, it does work pretty well. So if you don't want to use the whole bottle, you do not have to. It just might make the indigo color that you get a little bit lighter, but it'll definitely still dye it. So I'm just going to pour about the amount you guys have in your bottle. Okay. And then you guys should have a popsicle stick. You can use that to kind of mix it around if you like. Once your dye is all in, you're going to take your little triangle. I like to just put the edges in first, right? Because these are the parts you want to be darker. You don't have to do this. I just kind of like to do this. I kind of mix the indigo while I do it. And again, please be very careful since your water should be very hot at this point. Notice I'm not like actually putting my hand in the water. Kind of soak those edges. Okay, so they've got kind of, should have a good base. And then you're just gonna put it in. This is where you're going to want to take your popsicle stick and mix it around. So technically, I won't be able to sit here and do this on the tutorial, but what you should be doing is, if you have the time, you don't have to the whole time. When I made this item, I kind of would just stir it every 10 minutes or so, every 15 minutes. If you want to get a really good base, you should actually continuously slowly stir it for about 30 minutes to an hour, depending on how long you're leaving it in. Again, the only difference should be just how dark the dye is, depending on how long you leave it in. So now, once you get that all in there and stir it in, you can go ahead and set this aside if you're going to continue on other crafts. If you're going to continue with this, just this craft, just mix it for about 30 to an hour. When you're done, carefully, because remember this is dye, keep your gloves on, remove the triangle from your dye bucket here and immediately put it under cold water. So you're going to rinse the triangle under cold water to get out as much of the excess dye as possible. And then you can go ahead and take off all your rubber bands, take off the cardboard, and open it up. You can definitely continue to rinse it under cold water if you would like to, just to try and get all of that extra indigo dye out. And then just set it aside to dry. These items here, the napkins you guys have actually dry pretty quickly. I noticed, like I set it out and it dried pretty fast, so you should be able to see the pattern right away. Just remember to rinse it in cold water, but you should definitely rinse it to get all of that extra dye out. And then you should have a pattern like somewhat like this. Each will look slightly different. Like I said at the end, I will try to show you what this looks like, so you can kind of see how mine turned out and try to rinse it in cold water for you. There are, like I said, there's lots of different patterns, so there's ways to do squares rather than triangles, or there's twisting options. Feel free to look those up. They're all really fun and beautiful and have a deep history with Japan. So that is the first one. If you have any questions, please comment or let us know if you liked it, or anything like that. Thank you. All right, guys, hopefully that was enough time. I know that one has a bit of cleanup and hot water and dye and yeah. So I know that could take some time, so hopefully you're ready. This one has much fewer materials, as you probably have noticed. So you should just have your pre-cut wire and the beads, or stone beads, whatever you would like to call them. I think as a whole, everyone was pretty excited for this one. I am, because it really doesn't have that much material, but makes something pretty cool. We also, as you probably noticed, chose the pink stones to go along with the fact that it is cherry blossom season here at the garden, which we love and is a big time of the year for us. I've seen these used a bunch of different ways. People definitely use them as displays or gifts. You can also put them, they're pretty cute if you like put them in your like planter box, like with your own plants. They're kind of fun. The nice part about these too is if you do ever buy the supplies to do these, you can make them as big or as small as you'd like. My recommendation through kind of trial and error with making these is the wire. The thicker the wire is, the more sturdy it is. However, it can be hard to really, it's not as malleable. So you need something that you can still easily enough turn with your own hands. If you're trying to do a larger scale, you probably will need pliers and such to turn these thicker wires. So the one we have for you guys today is a little thinner since we are making a much smaller option. Okay, can everyone see it okay? Might be easier against the black shirt. But it's kind of fun. The other thing I will forewarn you about this specific craft, especially as we move through this, please be very careful. This is wire, and even though it is malleable, it is still very sharp. So, I mean, I've definitely poked myself multiple times making this, so please move slow and be very careful because we don't want anyone to get injured during this process. It doesn't feel that great to poke a hole through your hand with this, so just be very careful and go slow, and you shouldn't have an issue. If you would like to wear your the gloves provided during this, you most definitely can as well. Okay, so we'll get started. Set this one aside. Okay, so just to start, you should have your pile of wire. So you're going to pick up your first wire, and you're just going to fold it in half, right? Just make sure it's like kind of pinched at the top. The next thing you're going to want to do is pick up one of your beads and kind of string it onto the wire until it hits the area that you just bent in the center. Okay. So now that you have your bead in the center of the wire, there's multiple ways to do this, but I find the way to get the tightest twist on it is to hold the bead itself with your right hand, unless you're dominant with your left hand, then hold it with your left. Be careful, these beads, if you do try and twist them too hard, will break. So try to have a pretty steady grip on it, and you're literally going to hold the wire and twist. Twist, twist, twist. Just turning the wire. Have a pretty firm grip on it. And you're just going to keep twisting until you get a twist like this. I know that might be hard to see. So now you kind of have like your bead, the twisted portion, and then you still have the loose sides of the wire, right? So I usually say you can twist it, I mean, it's up to you, anywhere between 5 to 10, 15, whatever you feel like, provided a tight enough twist. You want to make sure the twist goes all the way up to the bead though. Like you don't want it to be like a big circle where the bead can just flop around. You want the bead to kind of be toughened in place. Does that make sense? Again, if you guys have questions or concerns, feel free to comment. Okay, so you're gonna, same thing, take your next bead. If in twisting you accidentally do kind of crush one of the beads, that's okay. There is enough beads in there that you have some extra ones. But just try to be really careful. Like I said, go slow with all of this. So you're gonna string the bead until the halfway point. Kind of doesn't have to be perfect. I'm holding the bead and just twisting it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Nope, 9's probably good. You can kind of fill it out and see, because they're all going to be a little different. So again, I have another bead. Okay, so you're just going to continue that exact same process with all of the wires and beads. So I did pre-twist some of these so that you guys didn't have to sit here and watch me do all of them. So this is another one that if you kind of go through, you might want to check out the one that we put on YouTube after this, so you can kind of pause while you do all of yours and then come back to it. So twist. Okay. That's good. Okay, that one's good. Add it to my pile. Okay, good. Okay, so same thing, make sure it's centered, folded, hold the bead, twist. Okay. All right, so I'm gonna put my extra beads to the side. I know you guys are probably still kind of twisting all the wires and such, but when you're done, you should just have a stack of all these twisted beads and wires. And this is what you're gonna use. This whole pile, we're gonna turn it into this little wire tree here. So to start, you're gonna have your pile. Again, please be careful. This one is kind of up to you, so everyone's tree is gonna look a little different. Sorry, I'm gonna twist this one a little tighter. You're going to be making the branches now. So right now I'm holding 3, so I'm going to start with 3. You can do 2s, you can do 3s. 4s gets a little too difficult, so I would say stick between just like 2s and 3s. I'm going to start with a 3 cluster and show you guys that, and then show you a 2. Eventually we're going to turn all of these into little clusters. So I'm going to start with my 3 here. I'm going to kind of make them kind of like a little chicken's foot, right? And you can decide, like, if you want them all to be the same level, like this, or if you want one to be a little shorter. But you're going to kind of hold them all like that, so their wires are kind of sprouting out to the side. And same thing, you're going to start twisting them, hold the beads together. So you're going to make these little clusters. It helps if you kind of always keep the wires spread out, holding the beads and twist them together. And now you'll see that you have the 3 have turned into kind of one individual cluster with 3 little stones on it. Same thing, I just twisted a little bit, it's only twisted from here to here. And then you're going to set it aside, and you're going to continue that, making clusters of 3s, 2s, whichever you'd like. So this one I'll do 2. And like I said, feel free, like if you want one to sit a little lower rather than at the same length, and just start twisting. Again, the more we twist wires together, the tougher it's going to be, so please go slow and be careful. Okay, so here we go. See, now I have one twisted together. It is at 2 different heights, like variations. Side. Okay. Okay, another one and 2. So this one might take some time as you go through. Another option you can kind of do is you could start with 2. Like let's say I just want to start with 2. Twist them together just a couple times so that they at least latch onto each other. And then add a third one in to get some more variation in the branches. Okay. And you don't have to do it that way. That's just another way you can kind of attack it. So now if you can kind of see, I have one with kind of like a longer branch here, and then these 2 kind of shoot off on their own in their own little cluster. Okay. Watched a lot of different videos on these, and people definitely get creative. I've definitely seen people use power tools with these, which is kind of impressive too. Definitely makes like the twisting together faster, I'll tell you that much. A lot of people do use wires. I do think they make fun little gifts though. Okay. I'm going to do a cluster 3 with some like variations on their heights. So I already twisted 2, and now I'm adding the third in to look a little bit different. So that one looks a little bit like that. So these are the branches clearly, so it'd be normal. You know, they don't have to look perfect because just like in any tree, they're going to kind of shoot off in different directions and heights and levels. And then as we get the base together, we're going to, you know, fluff all these branches out to be exactly what we want them to be. Okay. Another fun way to kind of mix these up too is there's lots of different colors of wires that you can use. So your guys' kit has silver, but I've definitely seen people use like bronze, greens, blues, and then obviously they choose like a bead that they feel looks good with it. I've also seen people use really thin wire and really tiny beads, and like they make one of these that goes in like a necklace pendant, which is very impressive. Okay. On the topic of cherry blossoms, if you guys haven't had time to come down to the garden lately, I highly recommend it. The trees look amazing. A lot of them have filled out, and it just looks amazing in the lower garden right now. The wisteria also is in full bloom, so that's always nice to see. Okay. All right, I don't know where you guys are at on this, but I have only a few left to kind of twist together before I move on to the next portion. Again, you want these to be twisted tightly together. You don't want all of the wires like loose. Okay. Okay, now that you have all your clusters set out, hopefully, then you're just going to start combining these as well. So just take whatever 2 you would like to start with. So I'm just going to take two clusters of 2, kind of place them together. Like I said, almost cross them, right? So take them, almost cross them, makes it a little easier. Hold on and twist them together. Okay, there you go. I have bigger clusters. And you're just going to do this with all of those. Okay. So now you can see how they kind of come together at the branches, right? Like now you see where they're all at different variations and lengths, and this one kind of stems off this way. This one you don't need to do as many twists, honestly, as the wire gets thicker, kind of holds tighter. So you might notice that you might not need to be doing like 10 twists or anything like that. It might be only like 5 or 6. I mean, even less. Some of these are only taking like 4, I would say, to kind of stick together. Twisting all these, making sure the branches are nice and tight. All right. Okay, so as I'm kind of coming down here, I've noticed that I only have one cluster left. I can't mix anything. That's okay, because I'm sure, as you kind of probably guessed at this point, you're really just going to keep combining these together and together. So just combined in my last cluster with only a few twists, like, right? So as you're down to the end, you're only going to do a few twists to kind of bring it in. So I'm going to do another one, kind of overlap it. So obviously this is like the top of the tree. So you're going to want to create kind of with the beads like a bulb up here. So you don't want to put anything like too drastically low, right? Because that's going to be the trunk of your tree. So just a few wraps in here. Okay, see, it's starting to kind of get a little bigger. And just kind of at this point start stacking them on top of each other at the same height. You're probably noticing that the wire is getting kind of harder and harder to twist together. This is where you want to be like extra careful that you don't accidentally poke yourself with this sharp metal. Okay. Like I said, feel free to wear your gloves through this portion, because you'll notice that there's just more and more kind of wire edges sticking out, but you can kind of see how it's all coming together into more of like a tree format, while all the other wires are very loose down here. Let's get stuck together. Okay, so I've kind of got a little cluster going here. It's almost done. I'm gonna add my last one in. Okay. Okay, once your last one is in, you're gonna kind of finish off your trunk just by twisting it all together. Make sure you leave some of the edges still open though. It's only twisted between here and here, because this is what you're gonna pull out to make your roots. So yeah, make sure you get all of the strands twisted in the positions you kind of like them. So I still have mine kind of tight together like this. Have my base twisted. This is the part you need to be super careful with. I'm going to start pulling kind of these outwards to make my roots, kind of like this one did, right? And this part I did cut, like eventually at the end I did like kind of cut these into the lengths that you want to do. Okay, since all the wires are kind of at different ones, different lengths. Okay, just gonna kind of fan all these out. You can press it against a table to kind of flatten it. It can be a little easier. Now that I've carefully sprawled this out at the bottom, you're going to grab like a few of them, like little clusters again at the bottom, and just twist some of them, right? Because roots kind of get thicker and then spread out at the ends. Just twist a couple of them together. Again, being very careful. Just kind of get whatever look you want. I've seen people kind of glue these to rocks also. So if you're doing that, you might want to keep these a little bit longer so that you have more to kind of glue on and wrap around a rock. And kind of spread them back out. Okay. Again, you do not have to do this portion. I'm going to grab scissors really quickly. And just kind of cut off the longer pieces that I think just don't really match the length of the roots. This wire is thin enough that I am just using like regular crafting scissors, but again, please be careful. Wire cutter also works great. Okay. Okay. Pull that little wire to the side. Now that I kind of have a little root section that I like, it's time to spread out the beads to make a fuller tree. This part's kind of fun because it's just kind of up to you what you want it to look like. You can kind of push and pull the beads however you'd like. Okay. And then kind of obviously like anything else, the more you do this, the more you kind of play with it, the more you get a hang of it and kind of have a better idea of what you might want to do with it next time you do something like this, whether that's using different beads or bigger beads or more beads, longer wire. Okay. The nice part is you can kind of mess with this as much as you want to get the look you want. Just kind of spreading them all out. Okay. Okay, and there you go. You have your own little cherry blossom tree. Kind of see, they're all different kind of roots and shapes and sizes. This one I made the tops a little bit taller. This one I made a projectile a little bit wider than this one is. And the base looks super cool and you can see all the individual branches. But yeah, as always, feel free to comment with questions, concerns. Yeah, just make sure you go slow on this one. And if you guys would like to send in pictures, I would love to see how like your little trees turned out. All right, thank you. All right, guys, hopefully that was enough time. We kind of went from a lot of supplies to 2 supplies, so now we're back to a lot of supplies. So just to make sure you have everything, you're going to need the long bamboo stick. Looks like this. Okay. You're going to need the string, so that it's, I know it's very hard to see. It's called invisible string. You can barely see it on here. You should have 4 strands of that. You're going to need a bunch of sequins that was provided to you. So they're all different colors. And they're just tiny little sequins pieces. I kind of have them all over the table. You guys can't see it, but I have all my stuff spread out here. Tape or glue or anything. You don't actually need tape or glue if you don't want to. That'll kind of come in towards the end. You might want a pair of scissors handy. You will also need the needle that was provided. So if it wasn't in the bag with all of your origami, the needle would be in the bag with the book binding. Since you will use that same needle for both. So like I said, if you're having trouble finding it, it might just be in the book binding packet. It's about, looks like this. And it's probably sticking into a piece of paper like this. Otherwise, it'll be in the bag with origami, either one. And then whenever you're ready, I do recommend with the origami, this one is going to take some time. I have my directions on the side. Hopefully you do too. It's really easy to kind of forget where you're at, especially when doing all these origamis. And we're going to do a few different ones in other tutorials today. So I do recommend having the directions handy, because that kind of helps in referring to, so that if I go too fast or such, you can kind of refer back to what I was doing. But I'll try to go slow. We are going to start with the origami cranes first. So I'm going to teach you guys how to make the cranes. And then you're obviously provided with a lot of origami paper, so then you can continue to make the cranes. And then the part 2 will kind of be turning it into the mobile. There's also an option in the directions to make butterflies. So just in case you guys didn't really want to do the cranes and you wanted to do butterflies, there is directions in there, so you can do a butterfly mobile, or you can do both. You can combine them if you want to have the cranes and the butterflies. So I am going to go through the crane option. The butterfly directions are in the packets. The butterfly is a much simpler fold. So if you're just having too much trouble with the cranes, you might just want to switch over to the butterflies because they are equally beautiful and a bit easier to fold. Okay. So you're going to start with a piece of origami paper, whichever, mine's double-sided, but whatever color you want to start with. Again, for those of you who are kind of like to organize in presets, another option you can do is lay out all of your origami paper and decide which order you would want them to go in. So do you want red here, green here, see how it all folds out? There should be enough too that there will be variations. So the one I'm doing is going to be 3 cranes, 4 cranes, 4 cranes, 3 cranes. So you can kind of decide what you want to do and how many cranes you want in each piece, and then kind of lay your paper out so you can see exactly what those colors are going to look like as they kind of get folded and hung together, if that makes sense. But to start, you can just start by folding them also, because we're going to string them after this. So grab your paper in whatever color you want to start with. And you're going to start by just folding it, if it's in a diamond shape, into just one large triangle. Okay. Using my kind of lilac purple side. The next step, what you're going to do is, if you have it facing this way, right, so it's pointed away from you, you're just going to fold it in half. So you can go to the left or the right. I'm going to go to the left to make a slightly smaller triangle. So it looks like this. Okay. So it was like this. And I folded it to the left or to your right. It looked like this. Okay, this next part's kind of tricky, so I'll try to kind of go slow, and the double colors might help a little bit here. You'll kind of see as I lay this down, the flap kind of sits up. That's good. So you're going to kind of bring it up top, kind of like a fin. Put your finger in between that paper, so you can kind of see it's like this. And you're going to open it up, right? So if you open that up, so it was like this, put your finger in it, open it up, you're going to press it down, okay? Very carefully, and it should actually turn that piece of paper into a square shape. Okay? So it was just my fold like this, lifted it up, stuck my finger in it, pressed it down, and now it kind of turns into this square shape you see here. Okay. So you can still see it kind of hangs open. Make sure when you're doing this that when you do press down, you're really going to want to smooth out your edges. Like make sure they're really clean, crisp folds. So now that you have this shape, you're going to want to do the same with this piece of the triangle. So I just flipped mine over. So I kind of, let's put it like this. Okay. And I'm just going to fold where there's already a crease. It's going to have to fold the other way to reaffirm it. So now it kind of looks like this. So I kind of have like another fin. So it should be like a square on the back. And then the two pieces like this. The idea is you're going to do the same thing. You're going to put your finger in it and push it down so that it is a square. Go slow so that you can make sure all the corners and everything are lining up. Okay, so now that I've pressed it down, right? It was open, press it down, have a diamond or square, however you want to call it. But as we move forward, this is the important part. This sides are just folded edges. This side, you can open it up, right? It has like all these layers to it. That open side, you want it to face you. So folded side, facing away. The side that can kind of open up needs to face you. Okay, so now that we have kind of a diamond shape sitting in front of us, open side facing you, pointed side facing straight, you're going to take, see there's kind of layers to it, 1, 2, just the top layer, and you're going to fold it into the crease, the center, which you already made a crease, like that, right? So it was like this. And I folded just that top flap into the center, and there should be a crease there from one you've already made. Okay, open side still needs to face you. You're going to do the same thing with the left side. Okay, so if I flip it, kind of see what it looks like now. Just folded the two sides to the center. Not the top, just the two sides. Okay. And then you're going to take the top of the diamond here, this portion, and fold it down towards you. See, I just took this flap and folded it down. When it's here, it's going towards me. Now I'm just going to flip the paper over, right? So the back of the paper should look like this. This is what you should be looking at. Like a real diamond shape. And you're going to fold these two sides. Again, same thing. The side that opens needs to face you over to the center. So they meet in the center just like the other side. So you're basically just repeating what you did on the other side. Okay. As we go through this, cranes are actually very difficult to fold if you've never folded origami. So if it doesn't come out perfect, don't worry. It's just kind of how it goes. So now you kind of have this shape going on, right? Everything's folded into the center. One side has like the triangle flap. So what you're going to do with the side of the triangle flap, it's kind of up here. You can kind of see it's like this. Push it back open. So you have like another diamond shape. Kind of reminds me of like the green Sims diamond. Sits on top of their heads, right? And you're going to unfold just one layer, right? So one's still folded, but it opened the flaps to one of the layers. With the side that still opens facing me and the side that's folded away, on just that first layer, I'm going to open it back up. So it kind of looks like this, right? So it was like this, and I open it back up. Keeping that fold right here. Like you can always put your hand there. As you open this part's kind of weird. You're going to pull it apart and use the lines you've already made to crease it out. looks like this. Kind of pulled it open, recreased it, and now it's like this. My other side is still folded. Oops. You can see, and I'm going to open the flaps to those. Okay, so they were like this. Open the flaps, and you're going to repeat the same process you did with the other side. So I'm just going to open that top layer back up, so it looks like this, and kind of fold it, like pull it apart. You can kind of see it tries to turn into a long diamond. It does need your help, so it's not just going to like perfectly fold into it, but I just kind of pulled it apart. Flattened it out, and now it's the same diamond on both sides. This is kind of important little test so you know that if you kept the open side towards you, is the bottom of it should be able to go like this, right? Like little legs, they split. The top can't. But that one side does need to be able to have that split still. So that's why you have to keep that open side facing you as you're folding these in. Okay. So now that you have that with the open side, with the little leg still facing you, you're going to take this and fold it over to make it meet in the middle again. So it feels similar, and you're going to what we did before, but you're going to do it again. So I'm just taking one side of it and folding it in. Okay, kind of see? Just the one side. And then do the same with the other side. So now it's like this. You can see I just folded the top layers in. And now you're going to flip it over and do the same with this side. Okay, so now it looks like this. The little point has gotten even finer, but you should still be able to do this, the bottoms of them. Okay. So everyone got there? So if I turn it to a different angle, they should be able to open up to the same shape. Okay, so now that you're at this piece, these points, believe it or not, are the wings. These top triangles, these are your wings. So now we just need to get the head and the tail up. So for this portion, what I like to do is wait, we've had it like this, holding the flaps, kind of open it up this way, right? And now suddenly these long pieces become kind of flat. You're gonna fold it up. And you'll kind of see where it naturally can't fold any higher. Like the paper won't let this fold go any higher. We're going to fold it up. Okay. Again, make sure you do a nice firm pinch on these. Same thing with the other one. I'm going to open up the back of it. I'm going to fold the head or the tail up. Hope that you can see that open. Fold it up. Okay. So now you should have pieces that kind of, when you hold it, just sit like this, right? So you know you're almost there. So you folded these pieces up. I know you've done a bunch of folds, but you're actually going to fold it again now that we're in this position. So you'll take the pieces that are like the heads or the tail, and you're going to fold that one more time. So I kind of pinch it together to fold it in. You can also use your nail as you kind of get to the finer point of the triangle. Okay, kind of folded it. Do the same with the other side. For those of you who've done origami before, I'm sure you know there is different ways to kind of do this finishing part. And then I'm going to pull these edges back open to what they originally were. And then you just kind of pull those new folded pieces out as far, or if you want to keep them in, as you would like to go. Okay, so you can see I have like kind of the peak where the two wings are, and then my two sides. Choose whatever side you want to make the head. I'm going to choose the side just simply by bending the tip of it. Okay. And you can keep your cranes kind of flat like this, or by taking the two wings, very carefully open them up, and gently, by holding the base of them, pull it apart. Just very carefully. And this is just a preference thing, however you want your mobile to look. And that's how you get kind of a fuller body. So you can keep it flat where it was more like up, or very gently holding the base, kind of pull it open, and it pops out the body of it so that it becomes like a little fuller and squarer. Okay? And now you have your crane. So I know that's a lot and it's hard to see on here because there's a lot of steps with that. I highly recommend referring back to the photos in the instructions because they'll take you kind of more step by step. And they're from an above, like an aerial view, so sometimes it might be easier. But that is how you make the origami crane. So now as you proceed, you're going to fold all of your origami paper however much you want to use, and you should end up with like a bunch of little cranes. Once you're completely folding, this is where we're going to move on to part 2, where you actually create the mobile using the origami you've made. So I'll kind of give you guys a second to get adjusted, but this is a portion where you're going to want to get the needle, the thread, the sequence, and your long bamboo stick out, and tape or whatever you want to use to attach it to the bamboo. Okay, so while you guys are kind of getting adjusted, I'm going to kind of think about what order I want my origami cranes to go in. For time's sake, I did pre-fold a lot of these, so you guys didn't have to watch me fold all of them. Okay. I think I know what order I want them to go in. So the first thing, so take your first piece of string and your needle, and you're going to thread your invisible string into the needle by doing a couple knots. Okay, it doesn't have to be super thorough. As long as the string holds on to the needle, you're good. Don't pull too hard. This is very fine string, so if you yank way too hard, it will snap it. And then on the opposite end, once you've knotted this, like I just threw a couple knots in it, you're going to go to the end of your string and add your sequence on. It's the same thing. I just had my end of my string. I took a piece of whatever color sequence you prefer to use, strung it through all the way to the end, threw a couple knots in it. Again, as long as it stays, put as many knots as you'd like so that you end up with a sequence knot at the bottom of your string and the needle at the top of your string. Okay? I'll give everyone a couple seconds to kind of do that. I know it's hard to thread. If you're not used to threading string, or even if you do thread string a lot, it's still difficult, especially when the string is as fine and hard to see as this one. You do not have to use such fine string, by the way, if you decide that you want something more colorful. I just used thread, like bought spools of thread from the craft store. You can use thicker strings if you want to use yarn and such, as long as you have a needle with a big enough base to loop it through. You can use whatever you want. It just creates a bigger hole in the crane, but it doesn't really matter if it has a bigger hole in the crane. So if you decide you want something more colorful or thicker to use a different string, you definitely can. This is just the option that we chose, but you can use whatever you prefer. Okay, so once you're ready for that, once you have your sequence of cranes or butterflies, whichever you made, and you decided the order, you're going to take the crane or the butterfly that you want at the bottom of the string first. So I kind of have my all in order. You can kind of see them. I want them this to be the top and this to be the bottom. So I'm going to start with my bottom crane. If you flip a crane over on its belly, especially if you've already popped them kind of open, there's a little bit of hole, like a little bit of hole in the belly that's already there. So you're simply just going to put the needle into that hole that's already there at the center and carefully kind of gently poke to find the center of the top of the crane, and you're just going to push it through because there's no hole at the top. So push it through the hole at the bottom of the belly where there's already an opening. Carefully use the needle to guide it to the center or the peak of the back of the crane. And just pull it through. Okay? So you can kind of see. So now I have the first one on. And because I have that sequence piece already at the bottom, it's holding it on. It's not going to fall down. So now that I have that, you're going to take your next piece of sequence. Because remember, these pieces of sequences kind of act as stoppers and keep the crane at the height you want. So take your piece of sequence, any color you want, thread it through. I recommend holding onto the sequence so it doesn't just like drop on top of the crane. So I still have it in my fingertips here, my crane below. This one takes some eyeing, okay? So now you need to decide how far apart do I want these cranes to be. Do I want them to sit here? Do I want them very close? If you don't want any space between the cranes, then you can actually just stack them on top of each other and you don't need the sequence unless you just want them on there for color. But they're kind of meant, the sequence are meant as like little stoppers. So you kind of need to decide how far you want these spaced out. Once you decide how far you want them spaced out from each other, you're going to knot that sequence into place. So right now I still have my sequence right here in my hand. I've got it spatially as far as I want it to be from another crane. And now I'm just going to knot it. So I'm just going to, by looping this thread through the sequence hole multiple times, I'm going to kind of put it where I want it. If you just keep like kind of looping it through the hole, it's not going to technically knot it, and that actually allows you to continue to like move the sequence up and down to get it to a height you like as you go. The only issue with that obviously is if you can move the sequence, and the sequence or cranes can kind of move position, but it allows you to manipulate it to get it to the look you want. But if you just want it to stay down, stay at the space it's at, then you do need to actually throw a knot through it and not just keep looping it through the hole. So I'm gonna keep doing this. Okay. So I just kept looping mine so that if the spacing's weird, I can manipulate it later. I don't know if you can see, there's my crane and my little pink sequence right there. So that's where my next crane's gonna go. So now that that's on in the space I like, I'm gonna take the crane that I want to be second towards the bottom. Same thing, flip it over, find the little hole that already exists in the underneath belly. Carefully kind of poke around the top to make sure I'm in the center of the top of the crane. Push it through and string it down. Okay. So now you can see that my two cranes on at the height I want. Okay. So now I'm going to repeat that. Now that I'm on my next one, take another piece of sequence, string it through here, kind of hold it up to get to a height that resembles the same amount of distance as I want between them. Hold the sequence in place and keep looping the string and needle through that piece of sequence to get it to hold. So I only threw one loop in, so I can still kind of move the sequence up and down to make sure it's in the spot I want it to be. Okay. Once you find the spacing you like, keep looping it or knot it, whichever you prefer. Again, for those of you who don't use needles often, please be careful. The needles are sharp. So I'm gonna knot this one. Okay, so now that I have my little green sequence on right here and my birds, I'm gonna take the next crane I would like to thread. Oh, I'm actually gonna switch it. I want this one. Poke it through the hole that's already at the bottom. Kind of carefully poke to find the hole at the top of the crane. Push it through, pull through, and now I have the three of them. Okay. I'm gonna do the last one. Pick up my sequence. Thread it through here. Okay. Spacing's good, so I'm gonna start looping the sequence. Also, guys, if you just like are having a hard time folding the cranes in general, and you know you're looking at the instructions, you're watching me do it, and it's still just not clicking, I highly recommend just going onto YouTube. There's so many videos of people making them. Some are still hard to understand, and then some are really good at it. So that's always another way to just keep, you know, watching other people's tutorials until one is good and at the right angle that you can understand the portion that you're having issues with. That is what I did. For those of you who tuned in last time for the previous DIY kit, you know that origami is not my specialty. So I've definitely watched a lot of people do it. I've had people show me how to do it. I watch tutorials. So if you're not getting it, no worries. You know, if you've never done it before, it's very difficult. Okay, so I looped my last sequence onto where I want it to be. It's right here. Be kind of careful too that the cranes don't get knotted as you go through. I'm going to take my last crane, have it go through the hole that's right at the bottom, carefully push it through the top of the back, and voila. This is a 4-string crane. This is where it's kind of why I kind of like not knotting it, because the spacing between this two is a little farther apart than I'd like. So, but because, let's see, because I knotted it, I can't fix that. Where if you just loop it, you can kind of move that sequence up and down, like as in like one of these. So that's the perk of not knotting it. But like I said, if you're confident or you're really thorough and measured it, then you would definitely want to knot it to keep it from moving. Okay. So now that I'm done with that, I'm going to carefully just cut the string and the needle. Oops, sorry. Again, try not to lose the string. I know it's very difficult to see. I'm using tape personally. If you would like to, you can tie it onto the bamboo, but I'm going to use tape so I can keep moving it around. Plus, it's easier for me to kind of take apart and redo to show anybody. Just a very small piece of thin tape. Okay. I already have my other cranes on my stick, as you can see. So I'm just going to add it to where I want it to sit amongst these ones. The height I want. And I'm just going to put a piece of tape on the top, taping that small piece of string down. Again, you can definitely tie the string onto this wire, to this bamboo stick if you would like. You can knot it on there. You can also use hot glue if you want to hot glue it on. There's lots of options there. If you're using a different string, you can obviously knot. It's a little easier to knot that on. I just did the clear pieces of tape because you can't see them, and it allows me to kind of take it off and readjust it if I need to, or fix a layer. So now I have it like this, and you have your mobile. You'll notice at the edges of your bamboo stick there are 2 double holes. So that is for you guys if you would like to string a string through it and kind of hang it, or tie it up or hang it to the ceiling. That is what that's for, is for you guys to hang it up if you're not going to actually hang it up directly off of the bamboo. So feel free to kind of throw whatever type of ribbon you want and hang it as you please, or hang it on hooks. But this is it. And if you did the butterfly one, it's the same thing. The only difference, you're still going to push it through like the belly of the butterfly, just like this one. It does not have a hole at the bottom of it naturally, so you will just be pushing it through. But you'll string them with the sequence the same exact way and attach them the same way. The only difference is just the shape that you have. But yeah, and then from here, if you didn't knot your sequence, you can move them kind of up and down to get them spatially the way you would prefer. But here you go. I personally love this. If you know any history on the backgrounds of like 1,000 Cranes, this is kind of where we got the inspo for this, and I love it. I think it makes a great gift, but I also think it's super pretty. And then has a great message with it. So if you don't know what that is, I highly recommend looking up the 1,000 Crane story. And it kind of brings a little bit more meaning to these little paper cranes. But that is it. Again, comment if you have questions, concerns, or if you're having fun, or if you're not pro at origami like me, you can do a shout out. But that is that. And I look forward to seeing your guys' mobiles. All right. Hi, everyone. So hopefully that was enough time to collect everything. This is another one that kind of has a lot of little pieces. But just a reminder, we will need the needle we used in the Origami Crane Mobile. So if you haven't grabbed that yet, make sure you grab the needle. Again, with this one, be careful because we are going to be using it to kind of poke holes and such. So I'll give you kind of a second. You're going to want your pieces of white paper, your 2 pieces of cardstock. All of you guys should have different colors of paper, cardstock, your needle. If you have a ruler, that is great. If not, no worries. You don't have to have it. It just makes things a little easier if you have one. Your glue stick, your scrap pieces of paper. They're all kind of random shapes and sizes because that's kind of for more of your own creativity at the end. You should have your ribbon. And then if you're wondering what this little pick looks like, we should all have one. We're going to use it to kind of help with the hole. So if you're wondering what this is, it will come in use at the end. But we are doing bookbinding. So if you kind of saw in the pictures, you might have seen this before. This is kind of where the scrap pieces of paper come into play, the cardstock. You see your ribbon here. And you're going to make kind of like a little cool notebook with it. Obviously, after you learn this technique, you can make them as big or as small as you would like. But this is what we are doing, so we're going to move on to bookbinding. I also recommend, if you have your directions, to have them out. I will warn you that I am no pro at this either, so I will be using this as a guide as we go through, since it is easy to forget and kind of complicated. So I will be using this. I highly recommend, if you still have your diagram of the bookbinding, please bring it out and use it because it does help guide as you go through. For those of us who don't have this just memorized, it is a little complicated, but we'll get the hang of it together. This one is a pretty good guide too. It's still a little confusing, so I'll kind of help with that, but it is pretty good if you get lost to refer to it. So to start, also if you have a pen or a pencil, that is good to have on hand too. Again, you don't have to have it, but it is really helpful when plotting your points. So I'm just going to take one of the white pieces of paper that was provided. And I do have a pencil on the side here and my ruler. That's where that's going to come into play for this first portion. And you're just going to fold it in half, as we refer to it as hot dog style, right? Okay. Oh, I fold a piece of paper. I'm going to fold it hot dog style again. Make sure that you're pressing your creases down really well. Okay. So now the paper should look like this. We're going to do that one more time. Fold it over one more time. I know it gets more difficult as you fold. Okay, so now it should look like this. So 3 times. Now that you've done that, you're just going to unfold it. Okay. So you should have a piece of paper that's kind of looked like it's accordioned like this. You're going to take your ruler, still holding your paper horizontally, and just holding it at the edges. You're just going to make a point with your pen or your pencil, it doesn't matter, at 1/2 inch in. Okay. So I just made one little point right here, 1/2 inch in from the edge of it. I'm going to do one again at the bottom. 1/2 inch. Once you have your 2 points at 1/2 inch in from the edge, you're just going to draw a line across, meeting at the 2 points. So with your ruler, both of them lining up on 1/2 inch in, you're going to draw a line. Oh, sorry, let me move it this way for you a bit. So I don't know if it's showing up in there. I can always make it darker. Let me try and make that darker for you guys. Okay, I don't know if that helps, but there's a line 1/2 inch in. Okay. So now what you want to do is we're making the points of where the holes are gonna go. So when you have your little accordion here, you should see how it's kind of creating lines. In the very first line or indent, make an X. So I'll try to make it dark so it shows up on your guys's. See, I made an X right there at the top in the first crease. You're gonna do the same thing on the first crease of the bottom. Okay, so I have an X, the first crease at the top and a first crease at the bottom. So now holding my paper the same way, I'm gonna count 1, 2 up from that X. Still on the line. I'm gonna go from the X and go up on the line, 1, 2, and create an X. Creases 2 up from my first. So I'm down here and I went 1, 2. I made an X. You're gonna do the same thing from the top point. You're gonna count on the lines 1, 2, and make an X here. So you should be able to count up 1, 2 from that one, and there should be still 2 more creases in between. So it's all the same spatially. So you should have 4 points total, or 4 X's. Okay? Now that you have this paper with the 4 points and X's, this is your guide piece of paper. So we're gonna use this to poke holes through all of our white paper and our cardstock. So I'm just gonna take, if you have a nice table, please put something down so you don't ruin it or poke anything through it, because we're literally gonna push the needle kind of through this to make the holes. So I'm just gonna take one piece of paper at a time here. Okay, because the cardstock's kind of thick. So I'm just gonna set it directly on top of my cardstock and poke holes directly in the center of the X's that I've pushed through. Make sure it actually pokes a hole through. So this is where having something underneath is helpful too. So you can feel it kind of pop through. Or if you can carefully, if you would like to, I'm gonna kind of pick my paper up so I can actually feel it poke through the hole. Making sure everything's still lined up. Okay. Okay, poked all 4 of my holes. So now that you have these holes, you've probably noticed in your cardstock that this ribbon is thicker than those holes. So I am going to use this to make the holes bigger. So take your little plastic pick and just kind of twist the pointed edge into the holes to make them big enough for that ribbon to go through. You can pop it all the way through and pull it through if you want. You can just kind of twist in the top of it to kind of get the hole size you want. But just big enough, at least so that pink ribbon can go through it. So sorry, I'll keep it on this side. Kind of see the holes in it are now big enough. I'm gonna do the same thing if I can find my needle. This is kind of a thing for me. I kind of lose my little needles a lot. There it is. Okay. Something I'm supposed to remind you to do that I need to do myself is when I'm not using my needle, I take the scrap piece of paper it came in and kind of just poke it in it so I can always find it. So, okay, take my next piece of cardstock, line it up, and start poking my holes on directly in the center of the X's I drew on my paper. Okay, put my needle on my scratch piece, take my little plastic pick, push it through, kind of twist it. Okay, so my 2 pieces of cardstock have their holes in them and they're ready. So now I'm going to work on the white pieces of paper. See how many I can push through at a time. Again, you want to make sure you line them up the best you can so that all of these papers, when they come together, that the holes will line up. Grab my needle, my scratch piece of paper. Be careful when using these small needles. I know that it's still like a very fine sewing needle. Okay. Make sure your finger is never behind it when you're pushing it through. You don't want to poke yourself with the needle. Sorry, I'm just going to get this last point. Okay. Put my needle back in my scratch piece of paper here. Take off the little example paper with the markings on it. So now I have my white pieces with the holes in them. So now I'm going to use the plastic pick to whiten them. This paper is not as thick as your cardstock, so be careful when using it that you don't just kind of rip a hole in it. You're just trying to widen the hole. That's it. Just only taking a handful at a time here so I don't bend the paper too much. I think this would be fun to kind of keep around the house as like a little notepad when you're done. Or of course you can gift them, which I think is super fun. If you like to draw, sometimes it's kind of cool just to bind all of your work together, like a little portfolio. It's always an option. This again is a very old technique. So it's pretty cool that you can kind of just do it from home and it still remains relevant and fun. Okay. So now that I have all the holes widened and all of my white paper, and same with my cardstock, I'm going to put them together. So the cardstock, one goes in front, one goes on the back, and all of the holes line up on the same side. Okay. I, at this point, kind of just like to make sure that everything's lining up a little bit by taking my needle again and just making sure that I can kind of push through all the holes. So that's lined up. Okay. Kind of widen them, make sure I widen them enough to get that string through. Okay. Just kind of rotating it. If you want to make sure it's wide enough too, of course, you can always use your pick again. Thing really does come in handy. Whoops, I just snapped that one. Okay. right. So now that the holes are kind of all wide enough and on the side, you're going to want to take your needle again and thread it through with the ribbon. Okay, so I have my pink ribbon and my needle. Just slide it through. You can knot it. You don't have to knot it if you want to just pull it through too. If you can do it without knotting it, I recommend it. I know it makes it a little bit harder but if you can just pull it through, you just have to make sure that it stays strung the whole time. So I'll kind of wait for you guys to do that. So again, I just took my ribbon, my needle, and just strung it through. I did not knot it. Okay. So now you're going to take your little booklet here with the holes all pushed through. And this is kind of interesting. So I have all my holes on the right side. I'm going to kind of pick it up and split it halfway. All right, I'm going to try and find the halfway point between the paper. There's no like right or wrong for this. Just kind of, we'll kind of see how it works out. So now that I've kind of picked a point in between, okay, remember all my holes are on the right side. I'm going to go to the hole, the second one in from the top. So there's the first, I'm going to go to the second one below it. With my paper split, I'm going to thread it through from the split, string it through, and pull it, okay? So now what you want to do is, I'm going to kind of take this string, open my booklet up here, and make sure the long piece is kind of just in here, okay? Making sure your ribbon stays strong, you're going to want to pull it through and leave just a piece. Not too much, but just a piece because you want to run out, because if you leave too much, then your string's going to be too short. But just enough in there that it's going to stay, this little piece here, and that you're going to be able to tie it. So that'll kind of come into play later. So now that I have that strung through here, the string is coming up through the second hole. The end of it is kind of in the middle we've chosen. Sorry about that. Let me restring this. Okay. So I know mine looks on the bottom because I was holding like this, but it kind of looks like that, right? Okay. So relining all the things up. It's where things kind of get tricky. We're going to go slow, and I have my notes that I can refer to. Have it like this. I'm going to loop it under and back through this same hole. Same exact one that the top of it's going through. So, sorry, kind of split there. That second hole. Okay. Make sure it doesn't come unstrung, just pull it through. So for those of you who are a slight perfectionists, this is the time where you want to start making sure the string doesn't like twist and turn. If you want it to lay flat, you want to start kind of making sure everything lays flat from this point on. Okay, so remember, I had it strung through, I looped it under and back up through the same hole. So now it looks like this. You can tell it's looped. Okay, just from that second one over. Okay. From there, I'm gonna, on the top, needle it back down through to the hole to the left of it. So second, just to the left of it, right here. Not the edge, just the one on the left of it. So the two center ones should have something strung through it at this point. So I'm gonna push it back down. This is where you'll find out how good you did at making sure the holes were wide enough. Okay, you're gonna pull it through. I know it's hard, make sure that you don't pull it through. So you see it kind of looks like this, jumping up now. Again, for those of you who want the perfectly flat ribbon, this is the perfect time. You'll want to start kind of twisting it and turning it to make sure it looks more flat and not as twisted. So now that it's branching over this way, you can always refer to your directions if you're getting confused. You're gonna loop it, all right? So now the string sitting under, back over and through. So back through the top. Okay. Pulling it down. Oopsie, there. Okay. And when you pull it back through, it should create the second loop. Again, make sure your ribbon's nice and tight if that's something that will bother you. Okay, always can refer to your directions if you got lost. So now your string's hanging back down, right? You have your 2 loops in the center, your string's hanging down, you're holding on to the end of it. You're gonna take your string and you're gonna push it up through the side, the very side hole. Okay. Pull it up. Again, this is the point where now it's coming to the back. You're going to want to sit there and try and fix that if it got twisted. Okay. I'm going to refer to my directions too if I got lost here. Okay, make sure I've got it. So same just like before. Now that your ribbon's sticking out the top, take your needle and push it back through that same hole. So what that should do, instead of having it loop here, you're gonna have it loop on the top. So pull it tight. So now, as you can see, the loop is going over the edge of it rather than on the side of the binding. Okay? So my book kind of looks a little funky right now, sticking out of the top. Have the side one. You're gonna take your ribbon, move it to the hole just to the right of it, just one down, there's a gap. You're gonna push the needle down through that hole, and you'll see that it kind of closes that gap. It's gonna get a little tighter as you're kind of pulling all this ribbon through. Okay. Okay, see how it closed that span now between? I have one looping over, one in between. Okay. So now, got 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm gonna take this one. Refer to your directions if you ever have questions or you feel like I'm going too fast to make sure. You have 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. You're going to put it back through the third hole, pushing it up. I'm just going to refer to make sure I'm doing this right too, because it gets kind of confusing around this portion. And just make sure that I'm doing this right for you guys. Okay. Pull it up, connects it through the back there, brought it back up. Okay, so now yours should be sticking back up the top again. You're gonna take it and push it through the fourth hole, closing that one. Okay, so now you'll see here that you have connected there. Okay, so now that you stuck it through on top, you're going to do the same kind of loop you did before. You're going to push the loop back through on the top side. And again, I highly recommend, like I need to refer to my picture all the time because it gets kind of confusing, but if you need it, please refer to that. You want that second loop to go back over the edge here to kind of close it in and hold it together. Okay, so now that you've done that, it should be sticking out of the bottom again on that last corner one. Same thing like we've been doing, you're gonna loop it back over and through. Trying not to, I know it's kind of hard, try not to threading it through the ribbon, but through the hole. because sometimes your needle's sharp, so it wants to go through. But this one, you're gonna make sure it goes this way so it creates that bind again on the edge. Hopefully this is all making sense. I know it's kind of hard from these angles. So now I've closed off the corner. I have all of my sides. I'm on the bottom again, on the very last hole. So this is where you kind of need to open your booklet a bit. We're gonna close this gap back here and string it through to that halfway point. So I'm gonna go back to that hole where that gap is, where I started. Kind of push it through a little bit, but I'm gonna kind of open the book to find where that string was that we left kind of sticking out there. Okay, I'm going to make this. This part gets kind of tricky. Okay. So I'm going to push it through. I just want it to meet up with the ribbon. Does that make sense? I found that. Push it through the bottom. String it in between the pages. Okay. So now my two strings are both in here, right? And that one hooked center. And we're going to tie these together. So I'm gonna cut these a little bit shorter just so they match. And knot them in the center. So I know it's kind of hard to see from these angles, so I do recommend referring back to the diagram. But remember, so you're going to start in the center, and basically when you're done, you should end up in the same center you started so that you can knot these ribbons together. Okay. Firmly. Okay, now that I have a firm knot in the center, I'm going to cut these ribbons down so you can see the firm knot in there in between my pages of the book. Because I don't really, I mean, you can leave them if you want to, but since I would want them to be more incognito, I'm going to cut them down as short as I can get them. Okay. And now, voila, I have my binded book. Does that make sense? Everyone can see it okay? Back side. And then the strings that are connected are just kind of in there. You can't really see them. So now that you have your book binded, which is super excited that you know how to do that now. Obviously, if you're using really thick things, you might need more specific tools to kind of push the holes through, or a needle that isn't so fine at the tip when you're pushing it through. I should say at the tip where you string it. Obviously, again, you can use different types of strings, so I just use ribbon. You can use thread. It just is sometimes it can snap a little easier, so the thicker the better it is, but then you will need the wider hole at the top of the needle so you can actually string whatever item you're using through it. So I'm going to put my needle back through the scratched piece of paper. You can put, if you've done this, you can put this to the side. And now here's where the glue sticks and the scratched pieces of paper, and if you have scissors, come into play. So as you've seen, this is kind of the example one. These are all just for you to kind of decorate it how you'd like. So you don't have to use any of the scratch pieces of paper if you don't want to. All of your kits came with like different designs and colors of washi paper and cardstock. You can cut them down and shape them however you'd like and use the glue sticks to kind of decorate. So I'm going to kind of just create something here. And then obviously you can decide whatever side you want the bind on. Let me just kind of create something here to decorate to show you guys. Cut them into whatever shapes you prefer. Okay. Kind of give it that look. So it's kind of cool because not only are you creating the binding for it, you're also kind of designing what you'd like it to look like. Again, there's no right or wrong to this. It's just whatever you want it to look like. You don't have to use all the papers if you don't need to or don't like the look of it. Okay. Got a little bit, a few more touches, and then I think I'll be good. And then any paper you don't use, feel free to use to decorate something else or toss it. Okay. Hope you guys are hanging in there okay. I know this is kind of so long, lots of crafts all at once. So it'll be nice once it's up on the channel for you guys to kind of do at your own leisure. Okay, I want to add one more thing. If you have any of this washi paper left over too, you can always use it to fold more cranes or do origami with it. Okay. Okay. So whatever you want to do, I just finished mine, kind of decorating it, making it look a little bit more fun and finished. You can open up all the sheets to it. And they all come out looking just a little bit different, and you can either give them away or keep them as notepads for the grocery store, or if you're like me, write things down so I don't forget. But yeah, as always, comment, or if you have questions, let me know in the comment section, or you want to show it off, you can send me pictures too. All right, thank you. All right, guys. So thanks for holding in there. We're on the last item of the craft kit. So again, you've probably seen the example of it. I just turned it into a little card. You do not have to do that. We did provide you with everything you need to create a card if that's what you would like to do, or to place it on something. We're gonna do the art of paper cutting, or kirigami, different than origami. I know that it probably seems very similar, but they actually are considered two different types of art. So origami would be the art of folding, where kirigami would be the art of cutting. So I'm going to show you guys how to make cherry blossoms, which are beautiful and I'm excited about. You've probably seen a lot of pop-up cards with kirigami. They usually often use like an X-Acto knife. It's pretty incredible to make these like 3D cards or paper creations. But you will see it around. I've seen it at a lot of vendors, and it is an amazing art that they do with, just finite cuts out of things. So I highly recommend looking it up to see what modern artists have kind of taken it and done with it, because they're very talented. But this is a more popular option that people do, so I'll teach you guys because it's very fun to do at this time of the year, especially when you can come here and the cherry blossoms are blooming, so you can teach your friends or the kids and just make these cute little cherry blossoms. It's a fun little talent to have. There's lots of ways to do it, so I'm just going to teach you a couple, and then you'll notice that like each cut you make with the folds creates something different, so all of your cherry blossoms will be unique to each other. I'm just going to set this little card aside, and you'll notice also in your bag that you had some cute little cutouts of cherry blossoms available. So those are just for us to decorate at the end, so you can just set those aside for the moment. And you should just have 3 pieces of paper. All of your papers are different prints. They're all shades of pink. Some of yours have patterns on them, but they all are different, but you should have 3. I'm just going to start with, pick whatever pink one you want to start with, whether that's the plain one or the patterned one. So you're going to take your paper, and you're going to want to also figure out what color you want to show. So because I want the pink, I'm going to lay the pink down facing up. So the color I don't want facing down, the color I do want facing up. I'm going to start my fold by folding it into a hot dog style. Okay. Start back with the shape. Okay. I'm going to kind of show it from this way. It's getting kind of hard. I'm going to take the corner and I'm going to fold it down like that to a triangle. Okay, kind of see? So it was like this. Folded it, the corner down into a triangle. Press it down, make sure it's nice and crisp. Open it back up, and we're going to do the same thing just with the other side of it. So I'm going to flip it down a little bit so I can see. Take it. Create another triangle. And press it down. Okay, like this. I'm gonna open back up, so I have a triangle here, triangle there, open it back up, okay? So you should have a little X on the side of your little hot dog piece of paper, okay? Now you're gonna take the other corner, and this is kind of where it gets a little confusing. You're gonna take this corner, and you want it to match up and put that tip of this directly into the center of that X. Okay, so let me do it really quick. So that fine point is directly in center of the X, okay? Took this corner and put it, and then fold it nice and crisp, okay? So it kind of looks like a funky shape, but that's what you should have. Take the corner. So now you see why it's important that you make that X mark with those folds. Okay, now that you have your paper like this, it probably feels a lot like origami. You're gonna fold it, see this flap? Fold it like so. So it should almost look like a little ice cream cone right here, okay? Just like this. Fold that corner. And crease it down. Okay? So I know it's kind of backwards because I'm trying to show you guys, but fold it, and I creased it, and now it's like this. Okay? So now you're going to take this piece, line it up, and crease it back just like before. Okay, so now I folded it just like this. Or I guess I had you guys like this, I apologize. Fold it back. Have a shape like this. And then you're gonna fold that piece over again, right? So that it's like this shape. This is what it should look like. So you had it like this. You're gonna fold that piece back. So this is what it looks like in the back, and this is what it looks like in the front, okay? So when that's your fold, right? So you gotta do the fold first. So I'm actually gonna fold my second piece of paper for those of you who need to see me do it again. So I'm gonna set my fold to the side. I'm gonna grab my other piece for you. So this is the more foil-like one. I'm gonna fold it hot dog style. Okay, make the crease. Take the corners of one side of it. Okay, took this corner, my hot dog style, folded it down, creased it, open it back up, do the same thing with the other corner of it. Okay. So now both sides have been folded in, creates an X. You're gonna take the corner and match it up so that the point sits directly in the center of this X. Okay, right, take the point, now it sits in the center of the X. Now I'm gonna take this flap and fold it over. So again, there's my X, here's the flap. It's like this, right? Center of it, flipped. Fold it. Sorry, if you're working with the foil paper, it does crease a little bit easier, so you have to be careful when doing it. So now I almost have like a little ice cream cone here, right? I'm gonna take this piece and fold that back, making those side of the cones meet up, crease it down. Okay, and fold this flap back over so it meets those lines as well. So then you should always end up with something that looks like this. Okay, so the same. Okay. So I'm just gonna go ahead and fold my tiny piece while we're at it. Same place, put it into a hot dog. Okay, got my little hot dog piece. Folding the corner down to make a triangle. Okay. Now open it back up and do that with this side. And now I should have creases of X on this side. Take the top corner, make it meet in the middle of the X. Okay. Took the top corner, made it meet in the middle of the X, or whatever direction you want to look at it from. Fold this flap over so that it now looks like a little ice cream cone. Okay, my little ice cream cone now. Fold this piece back to make it meet up in that same ice cream cone shape. Okay, still have my little ice cream cone. Fold it back, make that meet up with the side of the ice cream cone. And now I have the exact same shape as the bigger ones. Okay, so now what you're gonna wanna do is you're gonna wanna have it so that the tallest part is on your right side, okay? So I have it backwards here to show you guys. So you can see, but since I'm right-handed, I'm facing it, and the tallest peak is on my right side, okay? This is where your pen or pencil comes in. And you can refer to the diagram that was given to you. You're gonna wanna repeat that same shape that was in that one. So I'll kind of draw it on mine so you guys can see it. This is where the cutting or the art of it comes into play. Okay, so now you can see I've drawn the shape into it, right? Almost looks like it needs to be hollow. I don't know if you guys can see that. You draw it a little bit darker. But it looks just like the shape on the instructions of the craft. Maybe a little bit darker for you guys. Okay, I'm gonna see it. Okay, almost looks like an ear. Now you're gonna take your scissors and you're gonna cut on all the lines you've just drawn. Okay. Okay, this is where like it's the art of cutting, right? So I definitely cut out the shape of it. So now you just have this piece. Now you need to cut out that shape in the center to hollow it out. Okay. Go slow and be careful with your scissors, please, to cut out that center piece there. Okay. So then you should have something that looks like this, right? Because I cut out the top of it and then through the hollow center, still kind of looks like an ear. And then you can start to unfold it. Careful, especially if you're using the foil one, be careful because it does rip easy. Okay, so make sure you go slow when unfolding it. Okay, I'm going slow here because I don't want to rip anything. Okay, and whoops, there you go. See? Now you have your own little cherry blossom cut out, different than necessarily origami. So this is the foil one. I'm gonna go ahead and continue to draw the shapes onto my other pieces of paper. Again, depending on how you cut it, each one is going to look slightly different than the one before. Okay, I cut the top of it off. Now I'm going to hollow it out. Just falling onto the drawing that I made onto it. That's why it's good to have the side, the color you want to show facing in when you do this, so that when you draw on it, no one will even be able to see your pen or pencil marks if they're still showing, because it'll be on the back side of it. Okay. Slowly unfold it now. Okay. And now I have my second one. Oops, okay. Okay, set that to the side. And now I'm gonna do my little one. So it'll look like this one. Okay. So go ahead and keep drawing and cutting yours out. Make sure your paper's facing the right way when you're drawing and cutting. Again, always refer to the diagrams. The smaller one is obviously going to be a little bit harder when trying to cut it out since it's a smaller shape. Okay. All right, and then once you have them all cut out, you can decide what you want to do with them. If you want to give them away, hang them up, if you want to make kind of like a card out of it, like the one I had over here. Okay. Put all my scraps to the side here. Okay. All right. And now I have, oh, sorry, this one. Now I have my small one. Sorry, I know it's hard to see. There's the small one. Okay. And now, if you would like to turn it into a card, I'll move my scraps aside here. You can use the glue stick that was in the little baggie with the book binding. And I just glued them. I kind of wanted them to be 3D looking, not so flat. So you can't really see it on here that has dimension. But I actually just put glue in the center of this one, or I guess the other tin one, and just glued that portion on. So it was a little bit like more 3D dimensional. And same with the other ones down here, whereas like I used the small cutout cherry blossoms to just kind of decorate around it, and those obviously are flatter. But you can do whatever you want with it. Just use like all your little shapes. You can obviously make more. I just thought this was nice since it's cherry blossom season to send someone kind of like a letter or invite them to come hang out at the garden. But yeah, so now you know how to do kind of another fun paper activity that's not just like doing origami. Again, I know this is a lot of crafts all at once, so if you guys have questions or need to see something or questions for me, you can email me or comment on the channel and we'll do our best to get back to you. Give me a second here. I'm going to put you guys on a quick break and then I'm going to go see if I can go rinse out my shibori from earlier this morning and see if I can show you guys the finished look. Okay? I'll be right back. All right, guys, I'm pretty excited. It turned out good. I'm sure all of you guys turned out good too. So definitely if you want to email me and show me or anything like that, I would love to. I just pulled it out and this is what we got. And I think it looks so cool. And I think it's so easy to do. And obviously you can leave it in longer and create different designs. Like this is just the triangle one. But I think it just turns out so great. And you can do it to pillowcases, shirts, whatever you want to do, blankets. I just rinsed it in cold water and then took off all the rubber bands. And this is what I got. So I'm going to let it dry. And thank you so much for tuning in and doing these live tutorials with us. They will be posted for you to kind of go back and relook at as a video after this. But thank you again so much. We love crafting with you guys. And if you would like to share your photos, please do, because we love seeing all the things you create. And we appreciate you kind of hanging out with us and participating. So we hope to see you here hanging out under the cherry blossoms. Thank you.